good, don't they?
They do.
Really open faces.
So really the words and the sounds are just an excuse for us to sit together in silence. Every question is answered in this silence. Every thought is resolved back into silence. And so we then make conversation. We blow air out and make words and sounds, and that's really just an excuse. It gives us a justification to sit together in silence, because that's what's so sweet. If this silence wasn't underlying the words, who cares? The words themselves are empty. They have no inherent meaning. But when they convey this silence that is at the root of your being, then you speak in poetry. You speak in sweetness of love with unspoken words. That's what brings us together. And this is our teacher's grace. We were teaching for many years before we met our teacher. And it was good, it was useful, people benefited, but it didn't have this silent transmission that he gave to the world. Before we met him, no one had ever mentioned the silent mind to us. No one said it was possible to wake up in this moment. That was unheard of in the spiritual world, as far as we knew, and we were fairly sophisticated. We'd been around different teachers, different...
This was 30 years ago.
Yeah, 30 years ago. And in 30 years, the human psyche has changed. We can all recognize it in each other. If you were alive 30 years ago, and you're alive now, you see and know the impact, the spreading consciousness that we all are aware of and transmit to each other. And so that's what our gathering is for. To become so true to yourself that there's no longer any discussion or doubt. There's no turning this way or that. There's no stopping or starting or going or coming. Because you know yourself so deeply. And you can stay true to yourself so truly that the silent truth of yourself radiates as love. Spoken and unspoken.
Papaji used to say about any word, but in particular words that have significance in our understanding, like peace or love or oneness or truth or our silence. He said you have to undress the word. You have to really see what's inside the word. So any word that has significance for you, if you're willing to look inside that, you see what the word really can't define or say, but that the word is reflecting or vibrating from.
So the word itself is a transinduction. So we hear the word love, we hear the word emptiness, we hear the word peace. We go, oh yeah, I know what that is. Because that sound that we call emptiness or freedom or truth or love, that vibrational sound impacts into us, and we recognize the sound formation, we recognize the meaning of that word, and we understand it. And then understanding it, we think we get it. But that undressing the word, as Gangaji said, is to recognize the word itself is empty. But the essence that the word may carry is the true teaching, which is beyond language. It's before language. It's after language. And language is so useful for pointing us to that which can't be spoken. And so it's our greatest tool and our greatest obstacle. It's our greatest power, this power of language, the power to name. If you can name it, you have some power over it. Like if you don't have a name for it, it's something in the world that is like the atmosphere. It's like we're breathing it, but we don't see it. But once you can see it, you're removed from it enough to have the word for it. You have a power, whether you call it fire or love or human or animal. Suddenly there's a definition that we can grasp with our mind, which is so powerful and such a trap. Because when we believe it, we're entranced by it. And then everyone walks around sleepwalking in the trance that I'm awake. Everyone said, I'm already awake. I go to bed at night, I wake up in the morning. What's the problem? And that's the trance of language.
And there's also the corollary trance, which is part of the spiritual community, where you walk around saying, I'm not awake. I need to wake up. It still has within it the same thing that you are denying then that you have. So if you can look inside, awake and not awake, or enlightened and unenlightened, to really look inside those words, or where they're coming from, what's before either one of them.
So when Gangaji says look inside, it's not a mental process. It's not about seeing the word and opening it up and looking into it. It's recognizing what's pre-verbal that's being carried with the word. What's the unspoken transmission?
Although if you do the mental exercise, you go to that word and open it up.
That's right, it's empty.
What do you find?
Yeah.
It's like the shock to the mind, because we assume these words have dimensions since they have meaning for us. And maybe there are multiple meanings and dimensional meanings. But when we actually examine them, they have no substance. They're made of emptiness. So that means all the words that you say to yourself, all the words that you hear, however useful or enlightening, finally, they have no substance. That it's, for each one of the words, it's a substance you give them, or you project. Your own life substance, which is also empty, but empty and alive.
Yes. So when you see that words are empty, and you start to see that everything is empty, and you start to realize everything is empty. Everything. Whatever I call it, whatever I name it, it's empty. From the biggest to the smallest. That's the first level of really waking up. Actually in Buddhism, that's Hinayana, the realization of the total emptiness. Emptiness of me, emptiness of the world, emptiness of the universe. That's profound. Not to know it, but to realize it.
To look inside it.
To look inside it.
Inside this emptiness. So we know emptiness, we're saying deadness or flatness or non-existent existence, but to look inside it, it's really life itself, space. Thank you for coming out in the smoke. It somehow gives, it's understandable if you don't come out, but when you do, it gives a special meaning of gathering together in times that aren't perfect, times that are threatening. So we never want to speak up here in a way that is separate from your lived life. When we say emptiness, we are not suggesting that you take the word emptiness and then begin to chant, everything is empty, all is empty, I am empty, every word is empty. It could be useful, but that's not what we're suggesting. It's just what we are doing in your life in this moment, in this evening together, is really supporting you in opening what has been closed around every word or every event or every emotion, every situation. What has been given a past and a present and a future, because that's a useful way of thinking. What has been given minutes or hours or days or aeons, because it's a useful way of thinking, but it doesn't mean it's reality. So without denying the reality of your emotions or your numbers,
thoughts,
you can see inside them. You can see what their substance really is. And in that you can meet your own substance. Free of words, free of time, free of the past and the future. And that's what we're here for. So we're not here to teach you new ways of thinking. We're here to support you in just unraveling the way you have ordered your suffering, so that you can see, as Eli said, it's a trance. Initially, something happened, with some imprint in your mind, and you felt pain, and you suffered with that event. And then that event became part of a story that you call me. And if it turns out well, that's good news. And if it turns out badly, it's bad news. And we're saying that really it's no news. That there's something deeper than whatever failures or successes have been laid out in your narrative, in your story. That's what we're calling empty. Not empty as we would define it as devoid of life, but empty as all-inclusive, inclusive even of separation. Okay? Because we have this time together. And we will never be like this ever again in this particular formation.
So what we would encourage you to do is to make the best use of this evening possible. Like, I know people come for different reasons. You know, some people come to hang out with their friends. It's Sangha, you get to meet hang out with. People come for the high because you receive a transmission sometimes and it can be almost psychedelic, and they come for the high. People come to confirm or to deny what they've heard from other people, or compare. But whatever brought you here, let's assume it has nothing to do with what you think brought you here.
That's already freedom.
Let's assume there's some power of your heart that brought you here either in spite of what you thought or encouraged what you thought as a motivation to get you in the door. But that there's something actually more profound. You can use this time with us to fully wake up and be free. It simply is your willingness. It's not that we give it to you, it's discovering what you already are.
We do guarantee it, though. We guarantee that there's something more profound than what you think brought you here. And we guarantee that you have the capacity to discover that. And we guarantee you have the support to discover that.
And no one else can do it for you. Which means that to be here fully is to cut off your story of where you came from and where you think you're going after this is over. If you cut your past and you cut your future in this moment, you then have enough capacity to stay true. But as long as you're attached to where you came from and where you're going, that thread will carry you through this meeting and out the door again. And you'll continue on your mental journey. But if you're willing to cut that thread now, to be here with no exit, with no plan of what's next, with no escape from yourself, then you can actually meet yourself fully. And to meet yourself fully is the capacity to look through everything that you think is real. Everything you call me and mine.
Through and inside. Undress.
To undress.
Be naked to yourself.
To undress me and mine. What if me and mine are empty?